There is no denying that Batman is hands down one of the greatest, if not the greatest, detective to ever live. Batman's deduction skills and his skills altogether as basically deducing practically anything is second to really none. We've seen countless times where Batman can deduce things as minuscule to as threatening as anything you could possibly imagine. From deducing that Clark's wife, Lois Lane, was pregnant, to even something like figuring out that Speedy, or Green Arrow's protege, was more or less a clone and also a sleeper agent before anybody could even understand that was going to be a thing. He's done some pretty insane things, and those are just minor details of the capabilities that Batman can do as a detective. But he's truly never been in a situation like the one we're putting him in today. Today we are putting him on a spaceship or even a space-like area, depending on where we're talking about, that could hold from 10 to 12 people or space people in general, and Batman is going to head off into space, like I said, either a ship or an area, and he's going to have to figure out what or who the imposters are in this so-called ship or area. And this is one of the hardest tasks that Batman will ever face in his entire life, because these imposters are aliens. These imposters have superhuman-like being of strength, and Batman's going to have to figure out who's who with on top of dealing with tasks and also dealing with other people that are absolute idiots. Yes, these are things that Batman's going to have to deal with when he tries to survive the one, the only Among Us. Batman's going to have to deal with possibly 2 to even 3 imposters attempting to kill the people on the ship or the area that they currently are in. And these aliens have capabilities that could more or less one-shot a crewmate or someone that is utilizing tasks to help the ship or the area out. But let's just say Batman would have no trouble dealing with an alien in one-on-one combat, at least for the most part, as long as he knows they're coming. So I would say that we would give Batman a couple more or less defensive abilities that would force these so-called aliens to not be able to kill him, even though seeing Batman on a ship would be intimidating and would probably be your main focus, you could say, to actually eliminate. But ironically enough, I don't think the imposters are going to be the most actual lethal part of what Batman's going to have to deal with. I genuinely think that it's going to be the crewmates. You might be thinking, what does that even mean? Like, how would you even deduce that? And I truly believe that these crewmates are going to be the biggest issue for Batman, not only because there's a tendency for crewmates to kind of go off and do their own thing and do stupid stuff like hide in a corner and more or less give the imposters an easy kill so that the ship's tasks will never get done, or flat out not do their tasks at all and sit on what we know as cameras and literally not pay attention to a single thing on the cameras entirely. Now, if that's not hard enough, dealing with absolute morons, Batman's gonna have to deal with not getting voted off. Yes, voted off the ship. If you find a body or decide to hit an emergency button, we know that Batman has the chance to basically eliminate somebody. Now, Batman may deduce that maybe Red is the imposter, but that doesn't mean that everyone is going to listen to the Batman. They might think that Batman is yapping a little too much and say that they should vote him off. Luckily enough, Batman has some, or quite a few, different gadgets he could definitely use if he gets voted off early on, but at the same time, when you have the crewmates and the imposters working against you as one person, it makes things pretty annoying. But let's talk about something else in terms of Batman's analyzation of the ship or the area at hand. That would be Batman's utilization of detective mode. Detective mode would be perfect for Among Us because he'd be able to analyze footprints and also just killing patterns that he sees out of different imposters, being able to detect that maybe red or blue or yellow or any color is actually extremely suspect, or in Among Us we call them sus. Luckily enough, Batman would more or less know a ton about the maps and also the patterns that most people would normally take. So when people would go off on their own and go off to different areas, Batman would remember these things and make sure to throw sus on many of these people that he knows are in the areas of certain kills or certain ventilation kills that are possible throughout that time. Batman, on top of that, would make sure that the full utter strategy is fully in force in terms of not voting out people when there's 7 left, knowing that if they vote someone out that is incorrect, they could easily lose on a double kill. And especially if there's actually 12 people and we're dealing with 3 imposters, that same thing is more or less enforced with the idea of a triple kill. But of course, Batman understands all of this and also knows the map perfectly because we know that Batman is not going to walk in anywhere blindly. Batman would make sure to analyze the entirety of the map, entirety of how many imposters are currently there, and also how many people are going to actually be useful for him. Now, a lot of these things are going to come into play, but luckily enough, Batman himself is not going to be dying anytime soon, so leading the pack in terms of leading more or less all of these people, all of these so-called sheep, you could even call them, down the right pathway of finding the imposters, being that if it's blue, red, yellow, green, or anybody you can think of, Batman would be able to herd these mindless sheep, because let's be honest, Among Us players aren't the brightest in the bunch from time to time, so he'd be able to lead them down the right pathway. And when the imposter buddies are trying to protect their other friends, Batman would utilize this information to catch up on it and be able to distinguish who the other imposters are possibly throughout this time. And as the people fall, and as the people die, of course Batman would feel kind of bad and feel kind of deterred slightly by the fact that people are being killed, but at the same time Batman understands, or would understand in this scenario, that he can't stop it necessarily or in its entirety, but as he learns who these people are, you could even have a system, or he might even incur a system where he could handcuff some of these possible imposters until they actually can hit the button or start an emergency meeting or more or less report a body. And all of these things would lead to the success of Batman. But I'm sure some of you are wondering, I mean, we are talking about Among Us here. Could he survive Among Us? But could Batman survive Among Us as the imposter is also something that we need to speak on. Batman as the imposter is a scary one, because Batman understands that if he goes off with somebody, that if that person does die, then it is very inconvenient for himself as a person to be other known as sus. Soon Batman would be obviously voted out if he's not careful, but that's why the Batman we know is very careful, especially when killing. And now you might be saying, well, Batman doesn't kill. And I agree, but for time's sake, we are putting him as the imposter, basically an alien or a Batman taken over by an alien. So we're talking about a Batman that has no remorse for killing and will kill no matter what. I mean, we're talking about someone that has gadgets, abilities, and all of these superhuman-like strength on top of the fact that he is now, well, an alien, or at least possessed or kind of intruded by an alien, and can now kill these people that are crewmates. He would most likely be able to utilize the lights as he normally does, utilizing the darkness in his normal day-to-day life. He would kill and obviously vent away, basically covering up as much as possible in terms of his own kills, but also gaining alibis throughout this time. And he would be kind of advocating for some of these more unconventional votes, maybe even putting sus on certain people that are in certain areas that he actually got the kill for, and Batman would put the sus on them, so when they get down to 7, 6, 5, or something like that amount of people, he feels comfortable with pushing the vote onto them and more or less leading them to the eventual loss or Batman's eventual victory. But there is something to be talked about. There is only one Batman, so what would have happened if he actually has an imposter partner? Well, we must say this for starters, some of the imposters are very, very dumb in the head, so if Batman's not allowed or could not actually lead them in the right direction, we might be dealing with an imposter that might do some actual bad stuff in terms of not setting up Batman properly. Maybe Batman would go off with one of the crewmates and would eventually leave him, and that crewmate would die, putting massive suspect on Batman and putting him in a pretty bad scenario. Honestly, this version of Batman might even see it more fit to sacrifice his imposter partner so that they can actually get the win. Or, at least to a large extent, maybe kind of use him or his partner as an alibi or as a sacrificial lamb eventually to get that W that he is so looking for, especially because once it gets down to either a 1 versus 1, basically one crewmate and one imposter, he wins, or in another way where it's 2 imposters and 2 crewmates, then it's an automatic win for the imposters as well, and so on and so forth. If there's only 3, if there's 4, and stuff like that, you know, the obvious stuff that I would point out normally in terms of the regular system of the game Among Us. Now, I think overall we could all agree the greatest detective alive would have no trouble taking on Among Us, but the strategies may differ depending on if he's a crewmate or an imposter. But as always, I am a comic casual, so I would love to hear what you guys have to think about the idea of Batman surviving the game of Among Us, and would he be too suspect in while he's a crewmate or an imposter and get voted off? Or would Batman be able to be the perfect crewmate, voting off every imposter with ease, or even be the perfect imposter, easily killing and also sabotaging to the mass majority of every single person and crewmate, crumbling the crewmates to dust quicker than you could possibly imagine? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video, show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below. I saw someone say like, oh, if it's an April Fool's video, you're not supposed to say that it's an April Fool's. But the whole idea for these April Fool's videos is that, I mean, it's obviously a joke. Nobody would ever request, hey bro, could Batman survive in Among Us? I mean, that's kind of like an odd request, but hey, shout out to the guy that did say that I should do this for April Fools. I didn't mean that you're an odd person for requesting it, but I mean, it's kind of perfect for an April Fools with the whole Injustice Gods Among Us thing, which a lot of you were saying that it sounded like I was saying Injustice in Among Us or Gods Among Us, which is a pretty funny thing overall. But nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you enjoyed this video in this old jokey manner, YouTube thinks that you'll enjoy this one, so might as well go check it out, click on it, and show some love to the next one. Later.